So we're recording, which means we're live, hot mic. I can pick up everything that you guys are saying, even all the way in the back. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk a little bit about what 5.2 is asking here. So if we find our way to the agenda for the week, here we go. I actually didn't link it like I thought I did. So pretend that it's actually, we went to the modules instead and went to 5.2 here. A little sneak peek of some of the things I'm adjusting for Unit 6. Okay, here we are. So last time this said that you were supposed to create an entire second web page as compared to a separate exercise. We're going to do that differently. Instead, we're going to create a section using a div that has these three specific things of CSS going on in it. So you guys' phone should be zipped up. I can't take the time to check, so just please. It's a very simple request. Don't ask for much. So yeah. Okay, anyway, so I'm gonna open up VS Code here. And I'm gonna go to File, Open Folder for my specific Unit 5 for 6th period, not 2nd period. Go into 6th period web design. Look for my Unit 5 folder at the top there. And then this is our current progress on 5.1. So I'm gonna get rid of that. We talked, 5.2, excuse me. And this was me messing around. So I made sure that the thing I changed today actually worked. So don't look at any of this yet. I don't know why I deleted this class by class. And get rid of all that. And get rid of that too. Okay, so like I was saying, here is my Unit 5 assignment number 2, 5.2. We talked about the font family property and how you can use that to change the way that your text looks on your page. And take that anchor off real quick. And you can see that we've set it to Arial using CSS. We go to my style sheet. Oh, Helvetica, excuse me. Helvetica. So with the font family property, I've added a lot of different links in here. We need to wrap up exercise 1. We'll get into exercise 2, and that will be our day today. So I've gone through the canvas and added a bunch of links to a bunch of different resources that will show you how to do the specific thing that I'm asking. So if you ever need to remind yourself or review, those links are there for you to check out. But let's go step by step here and focus on what we know first, which we did already with the structure. So we have a regular text, we have a headline, but we do not have a block labeled code. So if I full screen my VS Code here, get rid of some of these H's. I'm just going to keep an H2. No, I'm just getting set up from Friday. Okay, so this is exercise 1. Exercise 1 needs regular text, it needs a heading, and it needs a div block. So I have my heading, H2. Just put whatever I want inside of the thing here. Lorem headline. After my headline, I need just some regular text, a regular paragraph. Regular old paragraph. Like this. And then after that, I need a div.code. If you type out the name of the tag and the class after a period, when you hit enter, it'll automatically turn it into a start and end tag with a class of code. And since that is our block level element labeled code, that we can put some fonts or some different font stuff in there. So this is block labeled code. Okay. So my 5.1 is looking something like this. We got a headline, we got a regular paragraph, and a div block labeled code. The first thing 5.1 is asking of us is to change all the regular text to be black Arial font. So you can do that a couple ways. You can either change the body selector. We'll get into the font family here in just a second. You can either change the body selector, which will affect the entirety of your available page, or you can focus specifically on something like a paragraph. If you wanted to assign a paragraph with a specific ID, you could do that. But I'm not going to do all that. I'm just going to write it for the entire body because our other stuff is going in a separate section. So to change the font to black Arial, we're going to use the font family property, font-family. And then with all these options that pop up, we know that we want, in quotes, the name of our font to be Arial, capital A, and then another A, and then a semicolon after that. So we go back to our output. It's going to look pretty similar, but this is a different font. This is now set to Arial. It's now set to a sans serif font because we don't have a lot of the cool decorations that fonts like Times New Roman have. But we've set that family to be Arial for the entirety of our available body tag here. Now, since VS Code is pretty smart and since HTML is pretty updated, we're in a good spot where it can just take the name of the font, but you need to give your computer a backup plan just in case something happens where it can't access the thing it needs to. So I'm just going to Google the name of my font, Arial font right there, and that'll tell me what group the font family is a part of. It says right here, sans serif design. So this is that grouping I was talking about when you guys were last here. You want to also include the name of the font family that your font is a part of. So I'm just going to go in here and add a little sans serif. It's this top one right here. It does not need to be in quotes, but it does need to be there. Just kind of like type equals text / CSS on a Zelda link. Sans serif, the font grouping needs to be there. It's going to look exactly the same, but the font family group still needs to be there in order for the computer to have all the backup plans available. Okay, so we know by default that the text is set to black on a white background, so we don't need to change that color in CSS. So that means we've finished setting our regular text to be black Arial. Now we need to do a similar process to set our headlines to be the font Garamond and set to the color of red. I have a headline 2 right here, headline level 2. So I need to use that as my selector, H2 curly bracket, and then we know for sure how to change the color to red, but font family is the one that's new to us. So that's going to change our headline to be color red. Double check to make sure. Okay, my CSS is nice and functional. And then we're going to go into here and add a new font dash family property. Inside quotes, we know the font name is Garamond, but we don't know the font family. We don't know the grouping by heart. We don't know the grouping by type quite yet. So what we'll do, I'm just going to type in Garamond to find out which group Garamond is a part of. It's a serif typefaces. It's a group of many serif typefaces. So we're going to go into here, and then after that, add a little serif like this, so that when we go back to our output, our headlines have become a serif font. You can tell by all the little decorations for our headline level 2. Whatever selector you put in there is going to have this specific color and this specific font family with grouping like this. So that satisfies our requirement for the first exercise on 5.2. The last thing we need to do is set the blocks labeled code, that's our div.code, to be blue Lucida console. So it's going to be exactly the same process as the H2 was in the CSS department, but we need our div.code selector. We need to tell our CSS what to focus on. And we're going to be changing the color and the font family the same way that we did on the H2. The font dash family, right? We know the quoted font name is Lucida console. But Lucida console is not a serif or a sans serif in the typical sense. So we got to figure out what group Lucida console belongs to. I'm going to do that by Googling. I don't want this. I'm just going to Google Lucida console. Lucida console. And you can see right off the bat, it does not tell us what group it's a part of, what membership it subscribes to in the font family category. It's designed by Charles Bigelow. That's awesome. It's download for free, but that's not telling me what type of font family it belongs to. So we'll just add a little more qualifier, a little bit more specifics, font family. That says that it is published. If we go to the Lucida console font family type here, we can look through here and see if there's anything that helps us. There is not, so we're going to leave that. We're going to go here to My Fonts. You can see here it's published by Monotype. So that's not a direct font family, but we can tell who distributes the font, who sells it, who makes money off the fonts. And we can make kind of an emphasis or a guess, on what grouping it might be a part of. So if we know that it's published by a company called Monotype, and one of our font options is monospace. When you type out mono, meaning one, or single, there's our monospace right there. That is the family that Lucida console as a whole is part of, which is going to make your CSS turn it into the exact same text, exact same font that is on Notepad. This is Lucida Console by default, and you can see it there. Block labeled code has changed to the correct setup that we need it to be right here. So your exercise 1 for 5.1 should be looking like this, except my regular old paragraph looks off. Nope, it's correct. Okay. Your exercise 1 should look like this. And now we're going to talk briefly about exercise 2 before, or not briefly, but we'll move on to exercise 2. And I will be able to help you finish these off during our work time today. So I'm going to have a little H1 label, H1 and then enter, or you can click on the wrench icon. That works too. This is exercise number 2. And then this is focused on a couple different things here that we need to create a div section for. So before we do any of the styling, before we do any of the font family for Verdana, before we set anything to italicize Georgia or make any links or make them turn red or whatever, we need a div container, a div section to actually build our stuff inside of. So we go div.ex2 or exercise2, or just div.2, whatever. I'm going to go ex2 for exercise and then hit enter. That's going to give us enter twice to make it a container. That's going to give us our div with a class of ex2 here. So we're going to focus just on the structure, focus on what we know for sure before we do anything else. We need the regular text, which is paragraphs, pre's, anything like that. Paragraph is most commonly used for regular text, so that's what I'm going to use. The first letter of each paragraph set to italicized Georgia. Since there's two separate paragraph stipulations or rules that our client's looking for, I need 2 separate paragraph elements. So I'm going to go in my div box, my div class of ex2. Paragraph, this is paragraph 1. And then after paragraph 1, Control Z to put that tag back there. P enter, this is paragraph 2. And we'll get into that here in just a second. All right, the last piece of HTML, the last piece of structure I need is a link, an anchor link to the SHS web page. So I'm going to go SHS, Google that real quick. And since I have my Google location services on, it's going to know that I'm near Seattle. We'll get to the website of Skyline High School, go ahead and copy that and put it inside an anchor link inside of our div box like normal. So A, enter is going to give us that high ref and automatically put our cursor in between the cursors, in between the quotes, and give us an end tag that we can work with here shortly. So I'm going to Control V to paste my my link into in between those quotes and then add a little content. Make sure you have content between your start and end tags, otherwise we can't see the link. So Skyline High School, and your output. Once you've done these 3 steps, these 3 HTML elements we've definitely seen before, your output should look something like this. We have our exercise 2. I put a horizontal line after my div.code so that I can create a little bit of separation between the 2 exercises. But we have 2 regular paragraphs, nothing crazy, and a Skyline High School link that has been visited with all of our default styling. That is our structure. If your page is looking like this, then you are doing it right. Now we need to style this structure. You can check mine real quick. You can also check the video later. This is what my HTML is looking like. This is what put my CSS on the side over here. What my CSS is looking like. Okay. Check yours against mine. See how it's looking. All right. Yeah, it'll be in the video too, so I'll be able to help you one-on-one. Okay, here's the HTML, but now we need to figure out what kind of specific styling that the assignment is looking for. We got to set the regular text to Verdana. So if we go here, and then we go into our, instead of selecting the entirety of the paragraphs, we need to just make Verdana appear in this div box in our exercise number 2, our div.ex2. So that's going to be our selector to start off, div.ex2, or whatever you named your div, whatever class you assigned your div. We're going to go in with another font family, font-family. They want Verdana, capital V Verdana. And I'm not sure what group Verdana is a part of, so I'm going to Google it. Verdana is a sans serif typeface. It pops up like that. So we're just going to go into here and set the typeface to sans serif like this. So now if we go back to our output, it doesn't look like much has changed, but it has. It's now set to Verdana font. If I were to set this to something, I can't remember what group Comic Sans is a part of, but that's good because it's a banned font anyway. EX2. Now we need to do a little bit of stuff for the anchor. Sorry, hold on, I lost my spot. Let's go back here. This one is a new type of pseudo class. If you remember back to the demo earlier this week, the pseudo classes are those conditionals. If a certain condition is met, then some CSS inside of them will apply. So if we're trying to set the first letter of each paragraph to be italicized Georgia, we can't do that by just setting a rule for the paragraphs in their entirety. So if I sent this to font family Georgia and I did all that work, it wouldn't affect the first letter like I'm looking for. It would affect every instance or every piece of that element on our page. So if we click on this link, this is talking about, remember, pseudo classes have a colon and then a name of their pseudo class, like hover or like visited or some other things like that for links. If you have two colons, you're getting into the realm of what's called a pseudo element. So it's very specific CSS, very specific conditions that need to be met so that you can change their styling in a specific way. So we're trying to affect the first letter. This is our what we add to our selector depending on the text type of the element. Since it's paragraph first letters, that's the thing I'm going to put over here. If I go into my CSS and P, colon, colon, you can see there's a ton of options for pseudo elements, but we just want first the letter. There we go, first letter right there, curly bracket. Okay, we're going to set that font family like we have been to Georgia. But when I go to Google Georgia, you're never going to believe this, but there's more to Georgia than just the font. So I got to add a little qualifier on the back here called Georgia font. There we go. Georgia font is going to pop up with the Wikipedia is a serif typeface. So that's the group I need to add to my my font family P : first letter situation here. So serif like that. So now when I go back to my output, after setting the P : the very specific condition of paragraphs with the first letter in them, if we go to our output, you can see that these letters are going to be a different font. Even in the divs, even in the other paragraphs, it's going to be a little bit of a different, let me zoom in a little bit. It's going to be a different sort of situation because we've created this very specific condition that needs to be met. The other thing we're going to add, the other thing the client's looking for is font-style. If you remember back to earlier in the year, decorating fonts, thinking about typography a little bit, font-style is going to change the way that our text appears as compared to changing its size or its color or things like that. And since this is only affecting the first letter of each paragraph, it's going to really create this sort of situation where on any paragraph tag, the first letter is going to become italicized and in the font of Georgia. So even if I have a super long paragraph element, right, it's still only going to affect that first letter. There's lots of first letters depending on the sentence level. That's not a first letter. But it's only affecting the first letter of the element itself. So if I go over here, close out. You don't need that as just for example. We've set our first letter of each paragraph to be italicized Georgia. The last thing you need for 5.2 is an anchor link to the SHS webpage. We did that. That gets bigger and turns red when you hover over it. So gets bigger is a subjective term, but turns red is not, however. So if we go into here, that's our HTML. It's not going to let me do any styling. But if I go to my 5.2, if I were to write a rule for anchor and set something like the fonts, sorry, not font size to be something crazy like extra, extra large. And I set the color to red. Like this. If I go to my output, it's just going to affect the link as a whole because we haven't added that condition yet. So you can add the condition using a pseudo class in the CSS selector. We're going to add that to our first part of our CSS, the thing we're focusing on. You can add a colon and then type the word hover. So then when we go back to normal, looks normal until I meet the condition, until the if is true, and it hovers over, and then Skyline High School gets whatever CSS I have within there. Those are what your CSS should be looking like for 5.2. That's what your HTML should be looking like for 5.2. And then if these two things are true, we'll go back to our index page and make sure that our anchor hrefs have both of these pages here. If I run my index page, remember this dashboard, you can decorate however you'd like. And we'll check and make sure that 5.1 from earlier this week is working. And 5.2 from just now is also working. And then that'll be how I go through and grade your stuff. Good deal. So once you've made sure that your index page has an anchor href to 5.2, and you finished up what I'm asking for 5.1 and 5.2, then you're ready to zip and submit both of these assignments at once. So to do that, if you go to modules, scroll down a bit, right at the top of Unit 5, Advanced CSS, we have a Submit Unit 5 Roots here for 0 possible points. So the points are going to come from these Canvas assignments. You'll notice there's 17 points total for assignment or Unit 5. That's where I'll be actually giving you your grades. And then I'll just pull them out of this Unit 5 root folder and pull them and analyze them student by student, give you the grades based on the how you did here, based off of this one single Unit 5 root submission. So I'm going to go to new attempts since I've been doing demos here. We got to zip this. If you haven't zipped it yet, you can zip it from the submission point of the journey of these files. We go in our 6th period web design folder, and then we check the box next to your name P6 Unit 5. I don't have checkboxes on for some reason. But if I select it by clicking one time, it's going to turn gray. I can right click and then go send to, and then go to compressed zipped folder like that. Hit enter, and then that's what I'm going to click open on. As long as it says B. Blakeney, I spelled my own last name wrong. B. Blakeney P6 Unit 5.zip. Submit that. You have turned in 5.1 and 5.2 with a single file as compared to doing a zip and a root for every single folder like that. So the rest of the day, I'm going to help you guys finish up 5.1 and 5.2. This video will be available shortly if you need to look at it outside of class. Yeah, that concludes our 5th unit of web design. The Unit 6 is just kind of more examinations of some of the stuff from Unit 5. And then in January, we're looking at Java January. And then that'll be pretty much our semester break. So it's scary. It's coming up fast. We'll talk more about the final project after the break. It's not something you need to worry about for my class right now. So we will have one, and you will have plenty of time to do it. So, anybody have any questions before I close up the Zoom room and help you guys one-on-one? All right, perfect. One second.